Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Burning Questions series by Fantasy Football Scout. In this series, Pras and I, Sonaldo, talk about the key hot topics for the week. Last week, I had an illness, and I'm very, very glad to be back with you guys. Pras, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Good to be back. I really love the title of the video. I don't know if you or Az came up with it. Eye of the Storm. Love it because that's exactly where we are. It's a nice little longish game week where we get to kind of assess what's going on, take a little bit of our mind off the very turbulent time we've had recently. So yeah, looking forward to a little bit of a break, but also the fact that we can take time to assess things. So I'm well.
Yeah, it's a little bit weird to have such a significant break after crazy amount of games in December. So this week, this episode's going to be a little bit more chill back, laid back, and kind of talk through a lot of players. So for today, guys, we're going to pick the best players from each of the teams that could potentially double in game week 22. Again, the key is potential because we actually don't have anything official yet. So things will change significantly in the next week or two, I assume. But it'll be, kind of fun to talk about these double game week players possibly. So to begin, Pras, what we have a visual from Lego Mane on Twitter. Could you explain what we have here?
Yeah, so we wanted to start before anything on where do we stand now, right? And I really like this chart from Lego Mane because it gives you a perspective of games outside FPL as well. So if you look at this chart, it gives you basically on a midweek by midweek basis what's coming up. And so things that stand out, I mean, for example, everything that's on the right of this chart are games that need to be postponed. So whether you're on a wild card, whether you're considering planning for the future, transfers, this gives you a good idea of which are the teams to target. So for example, Man City has no games to be postponed. Now, that doesn't mean they won't have a double in the future because this is only of the postponements that have happened so far or possible blanks that we know will come in the future. But this doesn't account for example, the quarterfinal FA Cup blanks that will come, the League Cup final blanks. I mean, Man City won't be there, but there are many more blanks coming and therefore many more doubles coming. But as things stand, we already see teams like Burnley who've got 4 games to be scheduled versus teams like City that have had their that haven't had any postponements yet. So I like this chart a lot. The other reason why I like it a lot is it gives you a perspective on what happens between now and game week 22. So we will be spending time on this stream talking about potential teams to target for game week 22. Again, that's whether you're on a free hit in 22, whether you're wildcarding, or whether you're looking to get players to transfer in. So what you need to know is, for example, teams like Spurs, right? I mean, a lot of people are looking at Salah to Son, whether they do that this week or they did it a week ago, but that's a popular transfer. But you should know that Son plays Chelsea twice and an FA Cup round 3 before the double in 22. So there's a lot that can happen. There can be postponements in these games that are rescheduled. That means the blank is affected, or the player could get injured without wishing that on anyone. But there's a lot that needs to happen between now and game week 22. So really, it's a time to just sit back, wait for the news, wait for whatever comes up between now and then, and actually wait for these quarterfinals or these semifinals for the Carabao Cup and the round 3 of the FA Cup.
Another, on top of that, it's interesting you mentioned Son because, as you said, yeah, they don't have the easiest fixtures from, let's say, the next 5, 6, 7, 8 game weeks. However, there's rumors around saying that Spurs may get a double in 22, 25, and 27. So there's so many, unknowns and things circulating. I don't know if it's the best idea to look too far ahead. But again, it could go either way, right? They could blank or they could get more doubles. Another thing I do want to highlight, Pras, is the fact that in December we had 7 game weeks. In January, we have only 3. So what does that mean is that in January, the games are going to be much more spread out. We're going to have much more of a calm break between game weeks. And that also means that even though we think Salah is going to be gone, let's say a month or who knows, 3-4 weeks, that's actually only 2 or 3 blank game weeks. So you should have a contingency plan to bring Salah back because as we saw yesterday against Chelsea, he's a world-class, one of the best in the world, right? So we definitely want to have him back. With that being said, it's not very difficult to bring him back. You just have to sell a Ronaldo and upgrade a midfielder. So a lot of food for thought, to say the least. Let's move
Yeah.
to the next slide, which is
Just sorry before you go, one more thing.
Go ahead.
So when a lot of people are asking when will we know these fixtures for 22, so just keep this at the back of your mind. The reason why we don't have the game week 22 fixtures yet, you see this column of 18th of January. This is where the midweek fixtures will fall, and what that means is the reason they haven't scheduled these is because the round 3 FA Cup games, which are happening this weekend, on the weekend of, or between the 7th and the 10th of January, any postponements will take priority, because you have to have played these third round games before you go move into the 4th round, right? So the priority for any games will be this FA Cup postponements. So if you're one that is hoping for a lot of doubles, basically what you need to wish for is no postponements that happen on this weekend that is coming up. So the dates to keep in mind is 7th to 10th of January are the FA Cup third rounds. If there are limited postponements, then hopefully by, let's say, the 10th or 11th, which is next week, we should find out when these double game weeks are, and which of these are falling within game week 22. So I think it needs, a lot of people have said this, so don't want to reiterate it, but don't do anything to your team until the 10th or 11th at a minimum.
And you would recommend for all viewers that regardless of price rises, just don't touch anything till then.
You just close the websites of these price rises. It doesn't matter if you lose another 0.1 on Salah or Sun rises 0.2. You just never know, right? I mean, For example, if the Spurs game is the FA Cup Spurs game is postponed because there's a COVID scare at their opponents, I forget who they're playing. But if there's a COVID scare there, that game will fit within game week 22. Therefore, Spurs won't have a double anymore. So why would you go for a Son rather than a Maddison who could have a double? So there's absolutely no point whatsoever going for any player until we know who's playing the 22 double.
Pras, a very interesting question just came about while we're talking about prices. A veteran manager such as yourself, I know you sort of alluded to the fact that you chased price rises early in the season. Let's say you're looking at strategy in FPL as a season. Early game, mid game, late game. Early game, you're trying to catch those Livermento price rises. At this point in time, are you less worried about price changes because you're already have enough team value, or are you still a little bit worried about prices because you want to get to the ultimate team later in the game, if you know what I'm saying?
Well, I think it's a completely different time. So at the beginning of the season, you chase price rises simply because the risk that you're taking is that the guy gets injured in a midweek game, right? That's your risk, or anybody else gets injured and you've wasted your transfer. Right now, the risk of going early is basically you get the wrong player. I mean, people who got Watkins, for example, before his game was postponed. So right now, it's not even comparable. Right now, chasing price rises, you're taking a risk far beyond your player getting injured. You're taking a risk that you get a guy whose game is postponed. You get a guy who doesn't have a double, who you thought will have a double. So for me right now, it's basic hygiene. So you don't chase price rises at this time. If you're getting priced out of your ideal team, doesn't matter. You don't even know what the ideal team is in 22. The reason why we're not discussing a free hit draft for 22 is because we don't even know what the fixtures are, who has the better fixtures. You will find a way. Right now, it's not a question of being clever and chasing price rises at all. I think that's a separate discussion on when there's no COVID postponements, whether you take the risk of an injury during a midweek versus the price rise. Right now, that's not even a debate.
Before we move to the next slide, someone's asking, Mark is asking, when will the FA Cup replays take place? My understanding is 30 and 36. Is that correct?
The FA Cup round 3 replays will be played in the midweek of game week 22.
Okay.
So that's exactly the same week when the midweek games, the postponements will happen. So let me try to explain this again. So this column in Legomane's Excel, after game week 22, you see this column, which is 18th of Jan. This whole column is free. This is the midweek between game week 22 and 23. Right now, it's completely open. So any game can move into this, right? But they cannot schedule that until they know that the FA Cup round 3, which is happening on the 8th of January here, you see this column 3. Until they know that these games have all taken place, they cannot schedule them. And that's also the date for replays as well. So those will all fit in on the 18th of January.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking of
That's
final
my understanding
fixtures.
anyway.
Okay, let's move to the next slide, which is team data. We have over the last 6 game weeks, team defensive data first. Tottenham at the top. Leicester, Newcastle, Leeds at the bottom. Anything you see here that stands out in particular, Pras?
Sorry, before we move on, I think I've understood Mark's question. So we were talking about FA Cup postponements. We were not talking about FA Cup replays. There are no FA Cup replays. They have been cancelled because of the COVID postponement. So just to kind of, sorry, we were talking about postponements. So they could still be COVID-related postponements in the FA Cup third round, and those are the ones that will move. There are no replays this year. Okay, so coming back to the table. So why we wanted to show this table is, regardless of players, we don't know yet who doubles. What we want to do is we want to look at the right teams to target on the doubles. We've had a week that's just happened where everybody piled on West Ham defenders, Everton defenders, and so far it hasn't worked out. Now, it's worth a punt. So if you have a slot and you went for it, that's okay. So not hating anyone going for a punt for a Dawson or a Keane, that's all fine. But I think when you have choices for the double that are coming up, you want to know what's happening. And I think this last 6 game weeks is a fundamental change in terms of how we view Tottenham. I mean, so far this season, we've looked at 3 teams that are elite defenses, which is Man City, Liverpool, and Chelsea. But I think there's a couple of things that stood out for me in this table. Number one, since Conte's arrived, there's been a massive uptick in terms of Spurs' defensive numbers. And Spurs will be an interesting topic to talk about because even their attack is looking good. We'll see that in the next slide. But I also wanted to highlight Wolves, for example. I mean, a lot of people we've got Man United Wolves later today. A lot of people have got Wolves as a good defense. Now, they have done well over the last few games. They have conceded very few goals. But if you look at the column here, which is XGC delta, if you look at column, the second to last column, they're actually significantly overperforming in their defense. They should have allowed 4 more goals than they actually have in the last 6 game weeks. So the defense is looking good. Sai is looking great, but Wolves is not, for me, the best defense to target. I think in terms of cheap defenses, I think Spurs really stand out. Arsenal are standing out. Brentford wasn't a bad shout at all for people who went for Brentford assets previously. And those people who are new to stats, one of the reasons we've looked at minutes per XGC. Now, I'm usually not a fan of minutes per XG data, but that's for players because sometimes not all players play 90 minutes. So for example, if you look at XG, minutes per XG, people like Mahrez are kings of minutes per XG because when they come on, they do well. But in teams, you can look at minutes per XGC because all teams play 90 minutes. So it's much more comparable. And why we didn't look at full XGC is because some teams haven't played 6 games and some have. So that was the reason why we've looked at minutes per XGC here. And for me, Spurs really do stand out. And it really, when we come to Spurs assets, and I know you're covering that, Sonaldo, it's a real question whether you go double defense or you go Son and Kane in attack. And, Spurs are definitely a team to target if they get a double in 22.
Before we go there, we will get to Spurs, but I will say this. I'm 100% going to triple up on Spurs come game week 22. At least that's the plan, especially if it becomes official. So that's where I'm at currently with Spurs, and I'm excited to talk about it soon. You just mentioned XGC delta. I want to kind of explain this delta real quickly to people who might not understand what delta means. For example, let's talk about XG, like the simplest XG, expected goals, XG delta. This is off FF Scout. The way to measure XG delta is how reality compares to probability. What does that mean? If a player has 12 goals from an expected goal of 9, then he has 3 more goals than his average expected goals, which means he has an XG delta of +3. So XG delta of +3 means over a short period of time, this could be simply a good run of form, or it could be a consistently performing player who exceeds their XG regardless and is a expert finisher such as Heung-min Son. So XG delta is why are you laughing? XG delta is that simply put.
No, I'm just laughing because I think finishing is a little bit overrated. Okay. But I agree with you.
Yeah, I can argue for days against you on this. He's lethal at finishing, to say the least. But okay, let's move on to the next table, if you don't mind.
Yep, let's do that.
Okay, so we have the attacking data. At the top, we have Man City, Tottenham, and Arsenal. Arsenal have been playing fantastic as of late, especially this weekend game. And then at the bottom, you have Southampton, Newcastle, Norwich, and Wolves. And that makes sense because Wolves never score. Anything you see here that stands out to you, Pras?
I think what stands out to me is Villa. So there was a lot of love for Watkins, and he did well for owners for 1 week. I mean, I think against Brentford, they looked a little bit light. Of course, Watkins didn't play. But for me, they're doing much better in defense than in attack. I think other than that, the team that stands out again is Arsenal and Tottenham. So I think both the North London clubs are showing both defensive solidity, but also good attacking threat. So people who've jumped on Martinelli and profited, Saka has done really well. Basically they've taken out Aubameyang and the whole team is now clicking. So Arsenal has looked very good. Spurs are looking good. And both these teams should hopefully double in 22. So we will talk about teams and their individual players in a little bit, but I wanted to highlight these two teams in particular. And also interestingly, Man United are not that high up. So we anyway know that in attack, it's Ronaldo or no one. And even for Ronaldo, I mean, you would argue that if you're thinking of a 12 million striker, would you really want to go for a Ronaldo versus a Kane? And interestingly, Sonaldo, you have Kane, I have Ronaldo, but I'm actually open to switching if one of the teams has a double or a better double, because I think it would be worth the money if, for example, Spurs had a very good double and United didn't have one. So that's one to watch as well. Liverpool and Man City, I think nothing to say. That we already know they're elite attacking teams. Chelsea is decent, but as we'll talk about Chelsea, there's a couple of blanks coming up. So with Chelsea, it's more about hold what you have. And then lastly, my another thing that stands out is Leicester, despite the fact that defensively, and you saw that in the last table, they were in the bottom quartile. In the attack, they're in the top quartile. So looking at Leicester attackers, whoever is left, when we talk about Leicester, we'll talk about that. But whoever is left, I think going for a Leicester attacker is also a shrewd play. So those are some of the things that stood out.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the Kane versus Ronaldo there, because just based off team attacking data, you would assume Kane is the better option. And also Kane individually has had some great underlying numbers in the last, let's say, 3 game weeks.
Yeah.
This is just one of those things in FPL. I actually was going to go for Ronaldo in game week, I believe game week 19. I can't remember exactly. But in that game week, I sold Salah and got to Son, and I didn't want to take an extra hit because I had Lacazette. I just play him, and he ended up returning for me, so that was great. I think Ronaldo blanked that game week. And so what happens the next game week is, oh, wow, Kane played better than Ronaldo. So all of a sudden, my pattern or strategy shifted, and I went for Kane instead. So it's just one of those things that naturally happen, but I didn't have an intention of going Kane over Ronaldo now, but I really don't mind keeping him for the game week 22 especially. So
yeah, the narrative might flip again, right? Because yeah, exactly. I mean, Kane blanked, even though he's looked pretty good. I mean, I thought he should have scored in the last game against Watford. He had this offside goal, which was that was not really offside.
That did not. That really made me.
That was very unlucky.
Yeah.
And then now Ronaldo plays today, and looks like the game is going ahead, which is obviously the first thing you look out for if you have players playing. And the second thing is, looks like he's part of the team that has been spotted. So the narrative could completely flip again if he scores a goal today.
Yep. We have a lot of questions regarding players and individuals, but we're about to go through 11 teams and the players each. So let's run through it, Pras.
Yeah. So just to introduce our next slide, or I mean, there's no more data, but what we're doing now is using the data that we just seen. There are 11 teams or 12 teams, I think, that we've identified that could potentially double in 22. So we already know that West Ham can't double. City cannot double. They don't have any games to reschedule. The other teams that we think can double, and this is obviously based on, again, the amazing Brent Krellin, Lego Mane's Excel. We think that the teams that have a high likelihood of doubling are Everton, Burnley, Spurs, Watford, Brighton, Arsenal, Leicester, Leeds, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Villa. And they vary in terms of how much likelihood there is for the team to double. And like we caveated, if any of their round 3 fixtures are postponed due to COVID, they will not double. Simple as that. So that's really it. And so what we didn't want to do is start talking about their fixtures in 22 because we really don't know if they double or not. And what we want to do is just talk about these teams. What do we like about them, whether it's defense or attack? And if so, which are the players that we would look to target eventually?
Yep. So on that note, let's begin with a potential double for Arsenal. And thank you guys again for joining us today. A lot of familiar faces, and shout out to Harry as well. I see you there. So,
Hey, Harry.
Let's begin with Arsenal. Listen, Arsenal played a fantastic first half, first 50-something minutes. I thought it was possibly the best game of the season for them until the downfall of Xhaka and who got sent off again? Gabriel. Okay, Gabriel. Yeah. So until then, it was unfortunate. But regardless, if I'm an Arsenal fan, I'm coming out of this. You just played the best team in the league, and you nearly beat them, and you feel undone. So that's always a good sign, especially for a team like Arsenal who's fighting for a Champions League spot. First of all, like, just FPL aside, I don't understand why Xhaka is the captain again. I thought, he got stripped from the band a while ago for throwing the captaincy band on the floor, but it's weird that he's captain again. I would prefer to see it on someone else. I'm nothing against Xhaka, just personal thinking here. But to get into it, in the last 4 game weeks, Arsenal's attacking data, as we saw previously, is top 3 in the league. They played City, Norwich, Leeds, West Ham. XG open play is 5.59. The stats are backing them up. They look like a team in form. They look dangerous. And when you look at... This is what I have here. When you look at the last 4 game weeks, you have chances created and goal attempts. You see it's very central, but it's also very balanced. So you're getting attack from the left through Saka, you're getting it from Martinelli, and most importantly, the guy that stands out to me is Odegaard. Odegaard in the last 4 game weeks amongst all players is 3rd in terms of expected assists. He's looking like the key player in that middle role. He's unlocking, football sometimes is about how these world-class players make a decision in the 0.5 seconds because it's so fast-paced in the Premier League. And in the 0.5 second half-tempo fast pass that Odegaard does is essential to guys like Lacazette, Martinelli, and Saka receiving the ball in dangerous position. So I really like the look of Odegaard. I think he's also a great FPL asset if you want to go for him.
Yeah, agreed.
Martinelli is the one for me. I still think Martinelli is the one for me. I have Saka personally in my team, and I don't mind him at all. I think you can't go wrong with any 3 of them. Martinelli is the cheapest out of them all. He's just a superstar. He's a baller in the making. 9th amongst all players in XG above Saka in the last, I think, 4 game weeks. He's right up there in XGI, above Saka and Odegaard. And this game, he had 5 shots with 4 in the box, and he could have hauled easily. I'm sure everybody watched this game, he could have hauled. I mean, he looked really, really good. Saka, 9th in XG amongst all mids in the last 4 game weeks. He looks like the player in form because he's scoring, but actually his underlying stats are good, but they're not as great as what he's actually returning, and I'm very thankful for his returns the last, I think, two game weeks. So I'm very happy to have Saka moving forward. With that being said, Arsenal do not have the best double in Game Week 22. It looks like they're going to be playing against Tottenham, Chelsea, Liverpool, and right now they have a blank in 25-27. I don't think you would invest in an Arsenal asset right now, unfortunately, but that team was looking good. Let's talk about the defense real quick. What do I see in the defense? Tomiyasu, fantastic player. FPL Mike Halpin, who's a very good friend of mine, and guys, do give him a follow on Twitter, is a huge Arsenal fan and sort of our community expert, is a big fan of Tomiyasu. But Tomiyasu, the issue, he pocketed Sterling that game, but the issue with Tomiyasu is he's not very good at attacking. I don't think he has that many attacking potential returns, to be honest. So maybe you save the 0.1 or 0.2 and you go for Ben White. Tierney is the best out of the lot in terms of attacking potential. In the last 6 game weeks, Arsenal defense is top 4 in the league as a team, but Tierney top 6 xG amongst all defenders in the last 6. So he's obviously performing and getting returns as well on the attacking end. So that is my breakdown of Arsenal. Awesome team. Very excited to keep watching them play, and I think they're going to do very well this season. Anything you want to add, Pras?
Yeah, look, I think in terms of players, you've covered it all. Of course, we've not talked about the mighty Ramsdale. If you have him, he's a great option despite the opponent. I think one particular nuance about game week 22, and it was also one of the questions. Unlike this double, where you've had a big gap between the first game and the second game because you have the FA Cup third round in the middle, the game week 22 double will be basically a weekend and a midweek. So you'll have three days between the two games. What this means is, ballers like Martinelli, Tierney, while they're very, very sexy picks, ultimately they are also rotation threats, because if you have ESR maybe come and play one of the games, or Tierney doesn't play both the games, for a double like this, for me, Saka, for example, takes a much higher precedence than a Martinelli, assuming you have neither, or you're looking on a free hit, because you know that he will play both the games. Same logic for Ben White versus Tomiyasu or somebody else. I think having the guy who will play both the games will be a much better play. Of course, you have to balance it out with what is the attacking threat. So if it was a one-off game, I would say Martinelli is probably the pick. But because it's a double played over 4 games, it's probably for me Saka number 1, probably Martinelli number 2 in attack, and Odegaard is also good. And why aren't we so hot on Lacazette? I mean, the guy he's basically the Firmino role of the team. He's coming back a lot. So he's very essential to the way they play, but probably not from an FPL perspective. He's done decently well. I mean, he's got returns from an FPL perspective. But if you were to predict future returns, I would agree with you that he's probably maybe 3rd or 4th in terms of priority to get.
Yeah, just to clarify, it looks like Lacazette was actually the captain, and then when he got subbed off, that's when Saka became captain. And also, Pras, I need to give a quick shout out to Prakash, who's joined us. I think his ID is under 360, because he actually helps with the visuals or graphics a lot every week. So thank you, Prakash, for all your help. Some great people in the community, FPL community. So yeah, fantastic. I think that's pretty much it for Arsenal. If we want to move on to 10 other teams that we need to discuss. So
yeah, let's do it. So do we agree that let's help the viewers with our top 3.
Okay,
top 3 picks from Arsenal. So what are your top 3 in attack and defense included?
You go first. Go first, Pras. Let me
okay. So I go Saka, Ramsdale, and Martinelli.
I go Martinelli, Ramsdale, Saka.
All right. Good. Although Odegaard is great, by the way. I think
Odegaard. I think Odegaard could be number 1. To be honest,
yeah, he could possibly be.
He could be picking up mad assists and scoring as well. All of them are great. All the 3 midfield options are fantastic for Arsenal. But Martinelli is the sexy one.
All right, let's keep going. Okay, so I go next with Man United. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on them because they're actually a very easy team to talk about. Because quite simply, in attack, you have Ronaldo and pretty much no one else. Now, I know there's been a lot of praise on Cavani and how he's come up, and Ranić is quite high on Cavani as the main attacker that the team has. But it unfortunately comes back to the fact that it's going to be another double, if it is a double, over 5 days. And I don't see Cavani playing both the games. Ronaldo could play both the games. So if there's anybody in attack that you go for, it's Ronaldo. Rashford, Sancho, Bruno, Greenwood, they're all rotation risks, unfortunately. Even Bruno. Defense is an interesting one. Interesting because we're not that good in defense. And today is not going to help because Maguire isn't available either. So it's probably going to be Phil Jones, who's going to partner Varane, which is very worrying for those of us who have De Gea, or like me, who's on a double up with Dalot. A quick word on Dalot. I still think that he's first choice. So Wan-Bissaka came in the last match. He did fine. I mean, I was pretty confused why we chose to play Wan-Bissaka against Burnley and Dalot against Newcastle. For me, it would have made more sense to play Wan-Bissaka against a Saint Maximin type player, and then against Burnley you have Dalot who gets forward a lot more. But I'm not the manager, but I think this is what we will see eventually when there'll be a better team or a better attacker who's attacking from the left-hand side. You may see Wan-Bissaka play, but I think Dalot will continue to remain first choice. So if you have Dalot, I do. I'm definitely going to keep him and play him in the double because I feel like he could get away with playing both. But there is a chance that he misses one and rotates with Wan-Bissaka. So that's the situation there. If you have De Gea brings a lot of value, not only in terms of clean sheet potential, which is, again, as I said, not super high, but he gets a lot of saves. He's involved in the bonus if there is a clean sheet. So he's a decent pick. So without spending too much time on Man United, I would say it's number one priority is Ronaldo. Number two is probably De Gea. And number three is maybe Dalot or Cavani if you really want to. For example, Cavani will start today. I think he will start again today. If he does well again, he will start to become part of the first team plans. He could be somebody who comes up, but it's slim pickings at Man United.
Yeah, slim pickings. Nothing to disagree here. I will say Man United have great fixtures till game week 27, so definitely worthy of an investment. I think the one mistake I might have made, it's very hindsighty and still a long ways to go, is I should have picked Loris over. Actually, maybe not because I'll go for a Spurs defender, but I'm not very confident with De Gea right now at the moment in time. But I will say my picks would be Ronaldo 1, De Gea number 2, and I want to keep an eye for Luke Shaw. I don't think I would go to Dalot right now, but Luke Shaw seems fantastic this game, and hopefully he comes back to life and starts to perform again, because when he is at his finest, he's a fine footballer. So one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, before we move on, a couple of comments. So I see Gorang has made a good point that when Maguire isn't there, it's good for the defense. I know that is tongue in cheek, but my issue is, even though he's prone to mistakes and he's making a lot of mistakes, he's still the guy who brings the ball out. So he's good for possession. So I think having Maguire is better than having not. And I know you're kidding about that. And the other point also made, where is that? Jones Bloke has made the point that Shaw looked very good at, and I completely agree. I think if Shaw starts today and if he plays well again, then I think it's his place. So for me, he would go to the top of the list. In fact, if Shaw has a good game today, for double game week potential assets from Man United.
Who was their center back pair? Okay. I'm gonna speak on Shaw in a little bit once we get into Spurs, because I feel like if I was Rangnick, I would know how to. This is really, really bad, but I feel like he's not utilizing Shaw to his full potential, and maybe the Spurs section will help with it a little bit. But anything else to add to Man United?
No, I think that's it. And they're a team that we will see again today, as opposed to the others that we're talking about. So that we'll get one more data point before we have to look at 22.
Okay.
So, your favorite team, and try to keep it under 30 minutes when you talk about Sun.
By the way, I'm not really a Spurs supporter. I don't really support a certain team. I'm just a Sunny supporter to say the least. But
fair enough.
Okay, so Spurs potential double in 22, a very likely double in 22, and a potential double in 25 and 26. So lots to watch out for. A lot of games to be rescheduled for Spurs. The double in 22 is pretty solid. Arsenal, Leicester, or Burnley, or Brighton. 23 is Chelsea, and 26 Man City. So it seems like the fixtures in long term are not great, but you have to remember, guys like Son and Kane actually excel against a stronger team in like Liverpool, who press high. That's where Conte counter is best utilized. So I wouldn't be so afraid of Chelsea or Man City, as we saw in the Chelsea-Liverpool game yesterday. It's all out sometimes, all out attack at times. I want to give you an interesting stat. Under Spurs with Nuno, 10 games, 3 clean sheets, 33%. Under Conte, 8 games, 5 clean sheets, 63%. Although this may be due to red cards and tougher fixtures early on and easier fixtures under Conte, it's still a significant increase in clean sheet percentage. It's double the percentage, so it's always good. And you couple with this the fact that they've only let in 4 goals so far under Conte in the Premier League. I'm strictly speaking in Premier League terms. So data, you just take it lightly. You take it for what it is. But I believe in investing in the Spurs defense because I'll back this data up with what I've been seeing and why Conte is such a world-class manager. When you look at Nuno and when you look at Mourinho, they're both defensive managers in many ways, especially Mourinho and Nuno as well, right? But sometimes, as we saw in the Watford game, when you defend the way they do, you have a very, very low block, and you just eat punches in waves. You're sitting back too much, and you're stuck. There's no game plan. You're just trying to defend for 90-something minutes and try to survive. Conte, in some ways, is the same way. Like you're a much more defensive structure in that 3-4-3, which is essentially 5 defenders. But the key is Ben Davies, because when you look what's happening is Ben Davies is playing in modern football. You build up from the back. You don't just play long balls all the time, right? Especially Conte likes to build up from the back. When you have a left-footed center back in Ben Davies supporting a Reguilon, that combination of those two players is tremendous, and I'll try to explain why. What do you see here, Pras? You see 2 heat maps. The one on the left is Reguilon, and the one on the right is Ben Davies over the last 4 game weeks. You look at them as individual assets. When you look at Reguilon as an individual asset, he's a great attacker, but he's not a good defender. So a lot of times when you employed under Mourinho, especially Reguilon and Son heat map was super deep. He had to come cover for Reguilon when he was bombing forward. So what does Conte do? He puts Ben Davies in there. Ben Davies as an individual is a solid, not a great attacker, but a very solid defender, jack of all trades, not a outstanding individual. So those two complement each other, and imagine combining those 2 heat maps into one. You have a very strong coverage on the left side, both left-footed, and then you add Son in there, who's basically a left-footed. So you have 3 guys attacking from the left with the left foot, confuses the heck out of the defender, and that is why Royal was wide open on the right, because the defenders are so busy marking the left side. Royal is left wide open, and he had all the time in the world, all the space in the world. However, he could not get these crosses in because his crosses were a little bit, iffy and weak. So basically what I'm saying is the Spurs team has become significantly better defender-wise, and I'd be very interested to invest in all 3 of them, one of the 3 of them. But Ben Davies is perfectly a fine option. Especially when Sessegnon plays, he plays centrally more, as you can see in this heat map. But under Reguilon too, he plays pretty centrally. So that's where I'm at with the defenders. And to quickly end it, Kane is playing Leicester and Arsenal next, and his record versus them are very, very good. So Kane is a perfectly fine captaincy option in Game Week 22. And Son is top amongst all mids in terms of XG in the last 4 game weeks. So he's getting the chances. He just has not been able to convert. So hope that helps. Yeah.
So I don't think there's an issue saying that we need 3 from Spurs, right? I think we agree on that. I think there's a few nuances within that we need to further consider. If we're talking about double defense, is it Emerson and Reguilon, or are you going for a centre back that complements one of them to basically have the nailedness covered? And then are you talking about, if it's double attack, is it Son and Kane, or is that too much money? Or can we also consider Lucas Moura, for example? What do you think of Lucas Moura as a third punt from Spurs?
I think he's a fantastic punt. I just don't know if I would go there. He got rotated once, and Spurs have scored a lot of goals under Conte. I think they've scored 14 goals, Premier League goals so far, so that's just under 2 goals per game under Conte, which is not bad. But again, Son and Kane eat up the XGI, and they will, Lucas scored in that one game, and he gets subbed off, so I'm not sure if I would complement him with Son and Kane. I would complement Son and Kane with a defender. But let's say you'll have only one of Son and Kane, then maybe possibly doubling up on the defense is a good strategy. I mean, not only did I just mention the stats that back it up, they also, tactically speaking, are a better defensive team. I mean, individual assets like Ben Davis, Dyer, who were getting a lot of slack early on the season, are getting a lot more respect now. So I really think their defense, at least having one of them, is a solid way to move forward.
Yeah, I'm actually more big on their double defense. I know Kane could be a good asset, but for me, I mean, let's go to the how we would rank it. I mean, for me, it would be Son and two defenders, and this is where I am personally stuck. If I was on a free hit, for example, probably maybe Reguilon and Emerson, but then I'm taking rotation risk with Sessegnon coming in. Is Reguilon the guy who'd play both the games? And then maybe I think maybe Davis is better just for the nailedness, but that's where I struggle. But I think I like Emerson a lot as the second best option, simply because Doherty is not really a competition, I don't think, for him. Emerson was good with bonus. So unlike Reguilon, who actually gets into, unlike Reguilon, who gets into the box a lot, Emerson is actually providing the width on the right, like you show. And so he's going to get a lot of crosses in, and that's going to basically help him with bonus. So I think, for me, it's Son, Emerson, and then Davis or Reguilon. That would be my three. But Kane is a good shout as well.
Yeah. For me, just to end it, is I have Son, I have Kane. So the third one, I'm most likely going to go either Reguilon or Ben Davis, but possibly Ben Davis just because I need the funds. So that's where I'm at. I just don't. I like Royale. I think he's a good player. I just don't think he has the quality in the final touch. So that's where I'm at.
But you agree that he's more nailed than Reguilon, right?
I mean, to a certain extent. I mean, Doherty could come in at any time, and there's rumors of Traore coming in as well. And Traore, I'm sure, would be deployed on that right side, kind of like Moses at Chelsea, but maybe that's further down the line. Right now, I think unless Doherty somehow manages to convince Conte, he's more nailed than Reguilon because of Sessegnon.
Yeah, and sorry, one good point made by Kieran in the chat. Romero could be back soon. Yeah. I think the back soon is a little bit. He may not make it for game week 22, but I think if you're not on a free hit, and if you're looking for a longer term, then you're right that Davis could be a rotation threat. They're also looking to sign a centre back. So I think if you were to go for somebody who's completely nailed, I think Dyer would be the one. If you were looking for a centre back only.
Yeah, Dyer's been playing great as well. So yeah, the most nailed is probably Dyer.
Yeah, and Sanchez is fine as well. But I wasn't sure that when all the centre backs were fit, whether Sanchez even starts. But you just never know. I think for me, Dyer, I know, is the favorite centre back. I mean, he's now converted into that role. Mourinho loved him as well. I think he would retain his place regardless of who they sign.
Yeah, I would not go to Sanchez because I think Tanganga could come in for his place as well. So there's too much rotation risk there.
Right.
Okay, let's go to Leeds. So Pras, take it away.
Right. With Leeds, okay, another not a very long discussion on them. I think they had a very good game against Burnley. From a defensive point of view, I know a lot of Rafinha owners were left ruining the points with that very, very easy chance that he got. But defensively, Leeds looked better. I think Llorente makes a big difference. Him coming back. Junior Firpo had probably the best game that he's had for them since joining them. Forshaw has come in and done a job. Dallas was all right. So I think in short, what we're trying to say is Leeds looked a little bit better, but we don't want to overplay the narrative because they were playing Burnley. So in short, I mean, I think it's a good time to get on Rafinha if you don't have him. And if you're looking for somebody more longer term, they will probably have a double. But I think apart from him, nobody else until Bamford is back. One small nugget for anybody who will look to free hit is that Roberts is injured because he came off, I think, on the 58th minute. So Gerrard could play both the doubles if they have it. So somebody who you'd have on your bench who would play the double is good. So I think not much more to say on Leeds, Rafinha or no one else.
Yep, perfectly put. That's Rafinha, and that's it. Okay, so we'll go straight to Villa. So Villa, have solid fixtures till 27. I thought they played a pretty solid game yesterday. I actually watched this game. Watkins was out. I think it's due to COVID, but I don't think it's been confirmed yet. But
No, but yeah, it's one of those things. They say he's out, but I think it's pretty much known that he's out for COVID. But again, anyone who's out this weekend, again, just a reminder, game week 22 is far away. It doesn't matter. They're X antibodies now. So people who are out now for COVID actually will be nailed players who won't disappoint you in 22, at least from a COVID perspective.
Yeah. So in this game, what I saw was they played the Christmas tree formation, which is like a 4-3-2-1, and it's quite rare. When you think of a 4-3-3, you have two wingers alongside your central striker. When you think of a more narrow 4-3-3, you think of Man City, where you have a left-footed Mahrez on the right and a right-footed Sterling on the left, so it gets more narrow. And then as narrow as can be is this Christmas tree, where you have basically number 10s complementing Danny Ings yesterday. The guys I really liked yesterday was Danny Ings and the baller in Buendia, who has the potential of everything in the world, but very inconsistent at times. Danny Ings early in the game had two significant chances, one that he converted into a goal. And what I mean by significant chances is he really is very good at using his body and making these off-ball movements, creating a half bit of space, and then very consistent striker finish and far post type of thing. So Stevie G, since he's come to Aston Villa, has really upgraded this team in many ways. I think previously what you saw at Aston Villa was the players were given certain instructions, but now the players are given new instructions. For example, Watkins was a player that usually played wide and drifted central. Jacob Ramsey was supposed to be box to box, but now he plays super high. Cash and Target were told to stay in their positions, but now they're bombing forward. So a lot of different things are happening, and kind of synchronizations are happening at this moment in time. I would say that Buendia is the one that hasn't been given a new instruction. He's kind of still in that number 10 role. So quickly speaking, I really do like the look of Buendia. I think he's someone to keep an eye on and had many, many key passes during this game. And I really like Danny Ings as well. We'll keep an eye on Watkins as he comes back. Matty Cash is a weird one. I know I love him as a player. I think he's an elite player. I don't know if he's a top 4 team type of player, but he might have the potential. But he's a jack of all trades, as I mentioned previously. There's no one thing that stands out. He's just solid at everything. And the thing about having Matty Cash in your FPL team is his points pop out of kind of nowhere. You don't really know when to expect it. So if you're willing to kind of roll with that, then basically if Aston Villa's plan A doesn't work, then he might pop up with a unexpected cross and assist or something like that. So that's where I'm at with the Aston Villa assets. Number 1 would be Buendia or Watkins, 2 Ings, and then 3 would be Matty Cash. How about yourself?
Interestingly, you don't have Ings at the top now. Now that he's back and he's starting, he'll be up front.
What did I just say? Did I say Watkins number 1?
Yeah, Watkins or Buendia, I think you said as number 1.
As long as Watkins doesn't come back, Ings would be very high up there. It's either Ings or Buendia. I think you can go for either. I'll say this about Ings, mixing my words here. What I noticed is that a lot of the play went through Danny Ings yesterday, and that doesn't mean he got the ball. That means that, like, for example, Traore was running up with the ball, and Ings made a very nice off-ball movement where in that 0.5 second Traore fed him, then Ings could have got another big chance, for example. So he's making all these decoy runs as well. So because when Traore didn't pass that, then he dribbles up and lost the ball, for example. So a lot of the things are going central in this Christmas tree position. But when Watkins comes back, because he's so versatile and such a unique sort of player, he can pull defenders off. He can play the winger role. He can play the target man role. I think that kind of doesn't make Ings as attractive of an option, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it really depends on whether Watkins comes back or not.
Yeah, fair enough. I think there's a couple of questions on the chat. Watkins will not affect Ings's time. I think the only thing that happens is Watkins will play on the left where you had Traore starting. When Bailey is fit, then the dynamics may change again. But I think for now, we'll see Watkins on the left, Ings up top, and Buendia on the right. That'll be the go-to formation. But that doesn't impact either Ings or Watkins. I think Watkins is good from the left anyway, and Ings will continue to play centrally. The only concern I have with Ings is whether he'll be able to play 2 games in 4 days, which is again the concern with game week 22. But otherwise, I think that would be the only thing, which is why I would say Watkins number one for me. Actually, Cash number one for me.
Oh, really?
Well, because I think Villa is the team that is still playing defense first. So if I was to get the first player from Villa, I would think about getting a Cash because he's the furthest forward, and unlike Target, who has competition from Young, I think Cash is completely nailed. So I would say for me, Cash is number one. Number two is Watkins. Number three is Ings, simply because of the fact that I think Watkins will play both the games and Ings may sit out the second game if they're in a very quick sequence. And then again, just like the last one, there's a budget gem, which is Ramsey.
Yep. Absolutely fantastic. Yep.
Yeah, he's looking very good. I think him and Gordon are coming are standing out as the go-to 4.5 options. It's just a shame we have so many other midfielders, and this is not the time where anybody has 4.5 million in their bench anymore, because we've all used the Salah money or upgraded somewhat during the COVID postponements. But I think if we were to go back to a structure, let's say a wild card or something, I think Ramsey is a good play as a 4.5.
Yeah, I'll just add a couple things to the chat. Deprup is saying Ramsey is playing high up. Yes, he's playing very, very high up. So I think he's a good shout as well. As you mentioned, Pras, Villa don't get too tested in defense that often. It's a bold statement here, but they insist on having the ball quite a bit, right? And there's two types of defenses. There's the Watford type yesterday where you sit in a low block and you take punches. And then there's the type like Villa, who's not exactly Liverpool, but they try to win the ball high and try to defend a little bit higher up the pitch. So they're more in that area of defense. They're just not as constant gegenpressing. But I do think they're a pretty decent defensive team. So if you want Matty Cash, I'm perfectly happy with you going for it. I love Ings. I just don't know if how Watkins will affect him, but keep an eye out for Buendia for sure.
Yeah. I mean, their defensive solidity since his first couple of games has come down a bit. So I'd be wary of Villa anyway, but I think if I prefer their defense more than their attack is basically where I would leave it.
Nice. Okay, let's go to Watford.
Okay, Watford. So, first thing, if anyone is not aware, Dennis is back because he's not going to AFCON, despite us saying that for the last 2 months. So apologies. We all thought he was going. And then last minute, there's been some admin issues. So that's, the fact of the matter is for us FPL managers, he's staying. And for me, if he plays all the games, given that he's playing centrally as opposed to King moving to the left, he is probably, dare I say it, the better option. If you don't have a Dennis or a King, that Dennis is probably better. Now, King is obviously on penalties. So you would get that upside over 2 games. Both should play. One thing that was concerning was he was subbed at halftime, and Ranieri was really, really vague on why he was subbed off. I think I read somewhere he said he had a little problem, but he was also a little nervous. I've never seen a manager take off another player for being nervous, but that's what Ranieri said. And João Pedro was actually very good. He almost, or maybe should have, won the penalty.
I saw that
against Spurs. Yeah, so maybe Pedro's a threat to Dennis, but I don't want to scaremonger because Dennis has been absolutely fantastic and actually crucial to Watford's attacking threat. So, I think both Dennis and King are good options. Avoid their defense like anything. There's a chance that in game week 21 they would have a triple game week.
Yeah, I remember
and
that.
I put out a tweet to ask people who can we get if it's a triple game week, and basically still people said just avoid our defense. I mean, Backman had a good game against Spurs, so I think he may even potentially keep his place if Foster is back. But I would say it's basically King or Dennis. I wouldn't even double up on their attack if I had a choice. If people have them, that's fine. Just go for one and stick to it.
Yeah, I think just 2 fun things here. Probably one of the bigger mistakes I've made this season is going for Dennis over Joshua King. I mean, hindsighty, but Man, Dennis is a great player. I mean, he looks very good. And the second thing is, Pras, honestly, if they had a triple game week, you definitely would go for a Watford defender, no? Let's just put that
Look,
scenario into mind. Game week
I would
23
probably
becomes
pick
a triple game week for Watford. You wouldn't go for a
maybe
defender?
if I knew Foster wasn't there, maybe Backman, because I know
Mm.
the goalkeeper will get some saves, but otherwise, not really. I mean, you've seen now. I mean, people went for Dawson, right? Because he has scored a couple of goals from corners in the past. And yes, this is all correct. But ultimately, West Ham have really poor defensive numbers. So just because they have 2 games, yes, you get to throw the dice twice, but you're still, you're still hoping for the odds are still against you. You could just get lucky. But yeah, I don't feel it at all. I don't think Watford will keep a clean sheet. They haven't kept one all season, if I'm not correct. I mean, they were very, very
Yeah,
close
very
against Spurs,
close. Mm.
but they haven't kept a clean sheet all season. Why would you go for them?
True. Okay, let's yeah, so the final point was they have great fixtures till game week 27-ish, and a pretty decent double, but do they score enough goals? I'm not sure. The two would be Josh King and Dennis.
Yeah, correct. That would be me as well.
Okay, let's go to Liverpool. Liverpool, the Egyptian king, strikes again. What can we say about Salah that we haven't said enough of? He's just such an amazing player. They look like they have a solid double, Brentford, Leeds, or Arsenal, and then great fixtures till 26. As I mentioned early in our show today, there's only 3 game weeks in January, I believe, so it's very spread out. So while AFCON may be a 3-4 week thing in real life, in FPL game week terms, it's probably just 2 or 3 games maximum. So do have a contingency plan to get Salah back. There are a lot of key players missing at Liverpool right now, although there's 2 weeks till the next game week. Thiago, Matip, Firmino, Alisson, Origi, Minamino, Phillips, Elliott, they're all missing. TAA Jota will probably be in most of our teams. I'm pretty sure 98% of us have him. They're not going anywhere. I think Jota and TAA become a very viable captaincy option come game week 22. On this note, between the two, if you had to captain one, who would you go for, Pras?
It would probably depend on the fixture, but between the two, I would pick TA.
Oh, really?
Simply because of the bonus potential. I mean, Jota is rarely in the bonus, but this all dynamics may change, right? I mean, we don't know what happens when Ox and Firmino and Jota play up front. I mean, we just don't know. And I would also, by the way, caution people that Liverpool are one of those teams that, theoretically could have a double, but they could also be one of those teams that actually say, we don't want to play the double and we'd rather play it later because, of course, they've lost Salah and Mane. And they would rather use, that fixture postponement at a time when they're back. So even though they could theoretically get a double, I think they would be one of the teams that would try their best not to have one.
Yeah. So I'll just end this Liverpool section real quickly because we know enough about them. Here's my thinking with Liverpool. Let's give the scenario they do get. If they don't get a double, I just roll with Jota and TA. I'm fine with that. Let's say they do get a double. And let's hope they do get a double because that makes the game week just more fun. I think I'm going to go for Robertson. And the reason I'm going to go for Robertson is I want Liverpool assets. They're the top 2 best team in the league. And I want, and I don't mind having him because I will just wildcard into game week 24, I believe, 24 or 26, and just got Salah back that way. So that's my brief thinking here, very premature at this time, but I really like the look of Robertson. But is he suspended for game week 22? I actually don't know.
No. He's only that's it. He's played it out his 3 games. Simicas played the 2 league games and the 1 cup game. So I definitely am also thinking of Robertson, and this is the reason why I kept James in 21. And the reason is that I couldn't see any replacement of a player who was doubling this week as the right defender. I didn't like Everton, West Ham, or Brentford, especially because they likely don't double in 22. And so I was trying to save this James slot for whoever comes in, and Robertson probably would be the one. It could be Reguilon as well. But from Liverpool, a lot of people will probably think of Firmino, and I see that a lot of Firmino love in the chat. He will be out, he'll be back after this COVID episode. So he will play both games in 22. But look, his role is not going to change just because Salah isn't there or Mane isn't there. He'll still be the guy who is going to be pulling back. I think Jota is more interesting because Jota won't play centrally. He'll play maybe the Salah or Mane role, maybe the Mane side, and Ox will play on the right side. But I would be concerned on two fronts. I mean, number one, how potent will that attack be without Salah and Mane? And number two, Firmino is still the guy who's still, making the play rather than being in amongst the goals. This may change, but I still definitely prefer Robertson or even a Van Dijk over Firmino as the third option.
This is one of the things that's talked about Liverpool quite a bit over the summers and winters when they don't make enough signings. Like, why is Klopp so thin? Maybe it's not Klopp's fault. Maybe it's the upper hierarchy that's not making these signings. But on the flip side, it just goes to show, you have to have a significant player that can break into this team to be able to come to Liverpool, or else you're just going to rot on the bench like someone like Minamino. So yeah, it's a very, I love watching Liverpool play, and they played a fantastic game yesterday. I think we'll end it there on Liverpool, and let's move to Brighton.
Yeah, I mean, one last thing, sorry, before we go on. The one thing with tripling up with Robertson is you're basically winding yourself into making it a little bit one step harder to get Salah back. So that would be the only reason where people could basically think, maybe let me just stay with two so that if I want to upgrade a Son or if I want to change Ronaldo, for example, if you had Robertson, turning a Ronaldo into Salah will take 3 transfers. So that's a -8. So it's not so easy to basically sell Robertson, sell Ronaldo, and then upgrade your midfielder to Salah. That's 3 transfers. So if you wanted to have a view that I want to make it as easy as possible to get Salah back, then maybe just sticking with the 2 on Liverpool could be the play, and riding it out. Otherwise, if you're looking at a wild card after 22, that's all fine. You can get Salah back that way. But that's just one extra consideration if going for Robertson.
I mean, you could do Son to Salah and Robertson downgrade to a 4 point, maybe not.
If you wanted to keep Ronaldo over Son, yeah, or Kane, for sure.
It'd be very tight because I think he's going to be like 12.8. Son is 10.5. So you could do it, but you'd have to go to like a 4.4-ish, I think. So yeah. Brighton, take it away, Pras.
So Brighton, I think as we saw in our charts and as we've seen throughout last couple of seasons, I think defense is where you target Brighton. Now the gem in their defense is Cucurella, the guy who plays on the left. He is amazingly attacking. If he was 4.5, he would be in a lot more teams. The only issue is this 5-ish price point is just a very tricky one.
Really well priced by official FPL, I'll say.
Yeah. He's amazing. I mean, he's basically Lamptey with output and with minutes. So I like him a lot. He would be my pick if it was a free hit, for example, and they have a nice double. I think Duffy is now, for people who still have Duffy from like their ghost team of wildcard in game week 5 or whatever, he's now much more of a risk with Burn, Webster. Lamptey I like a lot, but the problem again is as I keep coming back to it, the doubles will be very close to each other within 4 days. So you could see Veltman playing there if they play 4 at the back. So Lamptey isn't nailed for both the games. So
he could be decent yesterday too.
He didn't, because they played 4 at the back and Veltman was playing right back. I always come back to Trossard as the guy because he's playing out of position, but then Welbeck is back, and I don't really love Brighton's attack, even though they put up the XG numbers, they just don't score. So if I was to force rank, it would be Cucurella, Trossard, and maybe Mopé as the 3 that I would go for. Of course, Sanchez is an option as well. Maybe I should include Sanchez in that. Maybe it's Cucurella, Sanchez, and Trossard, but those would be the 3 I would look at.
Yeah, I mean, not much to add here. I think Sanchez is my first pick. I think Cucurella and then Lamptey. I would stay away from Mopé as well as Trossard. As you said, they just don't score enough. So
yeah.
And there's so many more options up there right now, especially in the midfield. So.
Yeah, I mean, Dave Roop is asking, are we sure Brighton can keep clean sheets? No, we're not sure at all.
No, not at all.
It really comes down to the double that they end up having. I mean, we're picking 3 players from each team, but it doesn't mean that we're suggesting that you triple up from these teams. It's basically, if you were to go there, who are the 3 that you should be looking at? I like their defense because of the fact that they are a high press team. They're a high energy team, and usually they keep the ball as well. So if you have a high possession team like City, for example, they're not as good if you look at it from a man-to-man perspective in terms of defenders and the three defensive midfielders that Chelsea play. City don't play like that, but yet they're a better defensive team simply because they keep the ball more, they press better. And I see Brighton as a light version of City in the sense that, of course, they're not that good, but they still do similar things like they press high up, they hold possession. And so for me, I would rather rely on a Brighton clean sheet than a Burnley clean sheet. And that's basically what the thinking is.
Nice. Okay, we just passed the hour and 5 minute mark. We have 700 something viewers, so that's amazing, amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. The support for Burning Questions has been overwhelming. I'm very grateful to be able to do this. I just love this FPL stuff and probably too obsessed about it. So thank you guys again. And thank you, Pras, for your amazing insight. And it's very lovely to be a pod partner with you.
Likewise.
So let's go to Burnley real quick. Burnley, I'm very interested in a Burnley defender. I know people are going to give me slack for this on the comment section, but I'm interested. They have a lot of games to make up. So they have Leicester, Aston Villa, Watford, Everton, Tottenham, possibly as a solid double in Gameweek 22. What did I notice about Burnley? I think they played pretty decent against United, even though they got scored on by McTominay. I thought they played pretty decent up to that point. I know Ronaldo had a chance very early on. Yesterday, they didn't do so well. Leeds played very well yesterday, so I'll give Leeds that. Burnley still defend in a 4-4-2. And so when you play a 4-4-2, it's really all about relationships because a 4-4-2 characteristically speaking is it's not mobile. It's not like modern day football where, positions are overlapping and players are going into different zones. A center attacking midfielder is a center attacking midfielder. A center midfielder is a center midfielder. A right back is a right back. It's very old school in many ways. So why do I say this is all about relationship? It's because think of who's your favorite player, Pras? Gary Neville. Think of the Gary Neville and David Beckham era where individually they're pretty decent great players, but as a unit, they really played well together on that right side. And I'm not comparing Beckham and Neville to Burnley assets, but I'm just giving you the example of how these 4-4-2 teams work. And that's why Lowton and what's his name on the right? Lowton and McNeil played really well together on the right, and I think Lowton may be a decent option, but I'll just leave it there. This is just fun things to think about.
So you have Taylor, Tarkowski, me, and Lowton as the back four.
Yeah.
And if I was to rank XGI, so of course XGC is the same for all of them. Brighton is not so great in defense anymore. Tarkowski is the guy who gets up and has the most threat. They're all not crazy numbers. They're semi-attacking, but Tarkowski is the one who gets ahead. Me is the one second. Lowton is the cheapest, but then he's third, and then it's Taylor. And so that's the way I rank them in terms of their defense. But I don't like Burnley defense. If you were on wildcard, if you were wildcarding this week, get Lowton and keep him as the fifth defender because he will have 4 doubles to come, and then you will probably want to play them. And like last season, people got lucky. I had Lowton as well. You get lucky in one of the double game weeks, fine. So if you have him, play him. But I don't think you attack Burnley at all in terms of their doubles. They're not doing very well. I think they will get relegated. I think the only guy in attack who's interesting is Cornet. Cornet came back, had a very nice free kick that he scored this weekend. I think he's off to AFCON though. Yeah. So again, he's gone. He's not going to be part of 22. But when he comes back, I think he could be a guy who sits in your team who will double 3 more times after 22, and he's the guy you keep from Burnley.
Yeah, so I'll just end it real quick. Cornet had a great free kick, but he was not great in the game. And you have to remember Cornet is coming off COVID. So these guys coming off COVID, something is still, maybe their body's not working to 100% yet. So just keep that in mind. I will say that I like Ben Mee over Tarkowski and Lowton. Against Leicester is very weak defending at set pieces. And right now, Ben Mee is the best in that in that Burnley defense in terms of set piece attacking threat. So if you go for anybody, it would be Ben Mee for me in the defense for the game week 22. And just ballpark throwing it out there, Aaron Lennon. I mean, Lennon in the last 2 game weeks has been playing out of position and is very, very cheap. So possible.
Yeah, but
option.
he goes when Cornet comes in, right?
I'm not sure. I don't know enough about Burnley to make that judgment. But yeah.
All right.
Okay, let's go to Chelsea.
Cool. So Chelsea is an easy one. I think you don't target them unless you're on a free hit, because obviously they have the blanks coming up after because of the Super Cup. So question is, what do you do with Alonso? I think if you have Alonso, you keep him. Alonso was very, very attacking yesterday. He's going to play now. I mean, sometimes we forget, we look at things from a football perspective and forget the FPL perspective. From an FPL perspective, Alonso is great. I mean, he's sometimes on free kicks. He's always hanging out in the 6-yard box. He obviously got a jammy assist yesterday. I'm not going to get into whether it was an assist or not, but he was still in attacking positions, had a few shots. If you have him, you play him, and Chelsea are always decent for a clean sheet. Now Kante is back, Kovacic is back. They'll be fine. I mean, as long as they play anyone, even if Pulisic is playing on the right wing, I think Alonso will basically start on the left wing. There's no other choice. So I would think Alonso is one to keep. Whether you have him on a free hit or not is a different story, because I think one of the doubles that Chelsea will have is City. So on a free hit, maybe avoid Chelsea altogether. If you're not on a free hit, you hold on to Alonso and you find a James replacement. That's all I wanted to say on Chelsea. There's not much more to say other than that. Mount and Rudiger are probably the 2 safest players if you wanted to go for somebody who will play both the doubles. Pulisic is an interesting punt that is emerging. Let's see how the Lukaku situation evolves. If Lukaku doesn't play a game again, I think Pulisic will see a lot more minutes up front. There's always the risk that Pulisic is moved to wing back like he was in the Liverpool game. But I think more and more, given how we all remember from 2 seasons ago, Pulisic is very, very good in front of goalie. I mean, for me, he's basically the opposite of a Werner, where he gets into the good positions, but he also is good in scoring. So I like Pulisic if he can nail down a position up front. I'm not going to mention the name Havertz because people don't have bad memories, but he could be decent as well. But I think for the double, we don't need to spend much time with Chelsea. They're more a sell if you have, for example, 3 Chelsea, get rid of 1 or 2. But I think I wanted to specifically say Alonso is fine. Keep him if you have him for the double.
Yep, I have Reece James and Alonso. I will ship out Reece James, but keep Alonso for the double, especially because I'm trying to bench boost and, I don't have enough. I can't take enough more than maybe 2 hits to get to that. So that's where I'm at with Alonso and Reece James as well.
Right.
Okay. Everton. Everton is a bit of a tricky, weird one. They don't. I think that the obvious ones are Gray and DCL. DCL unfortunately skied his penalty yesterday. I think he just had a lot of adrenaline rushing, and he's coming back off such a long injury. Probably had some doubt in his mind. Who knows? But they just haven't had enough time to create strategies and tactics around DCL, who is their key talisman. And when you have the entire season without the guy likes of Townsend, Davis, Richarlison, and Digne as well, it's really difficult for Rafa Benitez. I don't want to blame Benitez too much, to be honest. They've just had a difficult season with injury. So would I avoid the defense? 100%. I think their underlying team stats as a defensive team in the last 6 game weeks is towards the bottom, if not the bottom, from what I remember. So the only 2 would be Gray and DCL with this in mind. Gordon played great because he kind of shifted centrally and nobody really picked him up. He started on the right, and that was great for him, and it could be a great option at, I think, now 4.5, 4.6, something like that. Look, when it comes to Everton, you don't really need to pick out the players, but just because they have good fixtures, potentially look for the potentials of players, if you know what I mean. So for example, Doucouré, you wouldn't go for him right now. But let's say he starts making those late darting runs that we saw early in the season, then he becomes a pretty solid option because he's going to get at the end of a couple of balls throughout the game. So that's the kind of positioning and kind of potential that I'd be looking out for in terms of Everton, and especially DCL, because I don't have him. If I see some signs that okay, he's finding some form, then maybe I'll go for him. But
Yeah.
anything to add, Pras?
No, I think Gray looked good to me. He looked fairly lively. He obviously didn't end up with anything. I'm still hopeful as a Gray owner that he does something in the second game. And look, yeah, I agree with you. DCL is coming back. I think he'll be a good pick. I think we'll all go for or we'll try to get DCL into our teams at some point this season. Whether it's too early right now remains to be seen. But I see General Zod on the chat, and he's saying two new fullbacks to keep an eye on. But am I convinced with the Everton defense? Not really. We will see. But I think other than that, nothing more to add. Doucouré is certainly interesting. But for me, Gray is slightly better in terms of attacking threat. At least he looked like that in the last game.
Yeah, it was a solid game. Solid game from Gray. I thought he played pretty decent. And also, Digne might be going to Chelsea apparently, so that'd be very interesting to keep an eye on. Very unfortunate what happened to Chilwell after such a fantastic season. So lots of transfers happening in January as well. And last team, we went through 10 teams, and to our 11th team is Leicester City, and none other than a punt on Perez. What do you think, Pras?
So you gave away my punchline. But anyway.
Oh, okay.
No, look, Leicester are going to be an interesting one because they are, they haven't done that well. They've conceded a lot of goals. And now that we can go for their attack, they have no attackers who are fit, because Vardy is out for the next 2 to 4 weeks. So let's assume that takes him out completely out of game week 22. Daka is still injured, we understand. And if he wasn't injured, he'd be off to AFCON. Iheanacho is gone to AFCON. So basically you have a team with a decent attacking threat, but no attacker. So I think you have a combination of Maddison, Barnes, Lookman, and Perez. Between those four, three of them will start. And some Leicester fans think Perez could be the one who will get the attacking spot. Whether we want to go there or not is something that you have to debate. It is a huge punt if you do. But for me, I think, look, the obvious one is Maddison. Everyone knows he's been doing well. He goes through these patches, Maddison, and he basically is one of those streaky players. He gets goals 5 games in a row and then completely goes silent for the next 20. And whether you catch those 5 at the right time is basically where you're at. I see Nahal's comment on Daka. Maybe Daka's not off to AFCON, but he's still injured. He may not be back by game week 22. So it's basically Maddison, maybe Lookman, and maybe Barnes. These are the guys who I would look at. Leicester's defense has been poor. So other than maybe a nailed Castagna, I wouldn't look at anybody else in their defense. That's about it. So yeah, if you really feel punty, then go for Perez, and maybe we'll find out in the FA Cup third round how they're shaping up with this new team without Vardy, Daka, and Iheanacho. But otherwise, I think Maddison is the go-to guy.
I actually think I might take Lookman over Maddison.
Okay.
I'm possibly. I don't think I would go to Perez. I think it's between Lookman and Maddison, but Lookman looked really, really good, and feeling a little punty here. So if I had to pick between the two, I might go Lookman over Maddison. But
when Barnes comes in, so this is something that we need to see. I mean, luckily, I also forgot, in addition to the Watford game in the FA Cup, we'll also have the Everton game. So the second of this double game week against Everton. So we'll see Leicester twice before we have to decide on which attacker to go for. And that will be the time I think we make up our mind on how they're forming up. I mean, I think it's very possible that it's Lookman, Barnes, and Maddison, and all three of them are actually good options. And Lookman has a good eye for goal. I mean, I liked him at Fulham as well. I think if he starts, he's a good guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy. But yeah, fantastic. That we ran through a bunch of teams, and I guess we'll come back next week with a much more. Hopefully, we'll get the double game weeks announced. I doubt it, but if we do, maybe we can come back with a free hit team or something more interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if we're coming back next Wednesday, I am expecting the fixtures to be announced Monday or Tuesday next week.
Okay.
So if we come back on Wednesday and we know the fixtures, I think we could go through a free hit team, more specifically which teams to target for the doubles. So I think that would be a good time to do it. So yeah, that was the idea. I mean, we couldn't get into too much of our bus teams, for example, because it's too early. Again, until we know the doubles, there's no point. And not too much into the fixtures themselves in 22. That will shape more exactly on who are the players to target. But I think we just wanted to kind of give this overview on the teams for now.
We'll just do maybe 2 or 3 questions before we end it.
Sure.
Kotori is asking, captaining Arnold for game week 22 if double game week. Pras said yes. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. It'll come down to how much confidence Ronaldo is giving us. If I had, for example, my team, I have Son and Ronaldo. And if I'm not confident on Ronaldo's minutes and Son, I'm not, I mean, despite Sonaldo, not to offend you, but I'm not too hot on Son because, you know, when they play 3 up top and when there's Lucas Moura, Son is actually getting back a lot more. I would, if I had Kane, I would captain him, but I would be hesitant to captain Son. And if I'm hesitant on Ronaldo, then it's between Jota and Trent. So I think Trent is as good an option as Jota, and probably for me, maybe even better if they have 2 good doubles.
Yeah, to be honest, it's between Kane or Trent or Jota, between those 3. I don't think I would captain Son just because he hasn't shown the best form as of late, and I'll be the first to admit that. With that being said,
but he's got set pieces, plays a lot of minutes, so Son is still a good pick, especially in a time where we don't have a lot of midfield, a premium midfield players. A lot of people went for De Bruyne on wildcard, for example. So that shows you that there's a lot of money and there's not a lot of places to spend that money in midfield.
I mean, he could have scored the last 2 game weeks as well, which would be 6 game weeks in a row. So I'll just leave it at that. But I don't like speaking too much about Son, even though I do nonstop because it's too biased. But I got a great question here. I think from James. He says, would you bench boost 3 single game weekers, Antonio, Bowen, Cancelo, and a keeper with a double for game week 22? Pras, I know you and I are both looking to bench boost in 22. Are you still on that plan?
Well, that's a very good question because I will have probably something very similar. Exactly. So I'm very happy to bench boost with Antonio and Bowen playing Leeds at home. That's, I think, is a given, because I would start them in any other week, right? So I think that's the way you have to think about it. Would I start this player in any other week and I'm feeling uncomfortable benching? Just go for it. And a word about bench boost, and this is very specific to our team, so I didn't want to spend too much time on it. But for anyone looking at a game week 22 bench boost, it doesn't have to be perfect. A lot of times we try to think we need to have 4 players on the bench who play twice with good fixtures. That's never going to happen. And the cost of sometimes wildcarding to bench boost is probably a cost too high. So if you are able to get a semi-decent bench boost out of the way in game week 22, and then you wildcard out of that bench boost to basically fix your second goalkeeper. For example, I have spent too much money, De Gea and Ramsdale in goal. I don't want that. So if I want to get out of the bench boost by utilizing my money much smarter, get Salah back, I would rather use the wildcard to get out of bench boost than get into the bench boost. So to answer your question, if I'm in a position to, for example, my team's not there, great time to free hit. I think Rubber Ducky is on the chat. Hey, I think free hit game week 22 is a great play if you have 2 free hits in hand, because if you blow up your second free hit now in game week 22, you will struggle in the blanks that will come up later in game week 29, or the big double that will come in game week 34 or 36. But if you have 2 free hits, I think using one now is a good play. Bench boosting now is a good play. My biggest risk with bench boost is what happened to Foden, right? What happened to Watkins? Suddenly the team sheet appears and your player who you've got, as a potential starter suddenly is out for both the games. And then you actually need the bench. So your bench boost is basically worth 0 for that particular position. That's my biggest risk with bench boost. But we have another couple of weeks to see how the situation is evolving. I think one thing that we've seen over the last 3 game weeks is there's a little bit more predictability with games where we're getting to hear about postponements a little bit earlier. Teams are managing this COVID scare a little bit better because you haven't seen the same team have a scare again. I mean, for example, Spurs games have been fine once, they were out of their COVID outbreak, similar to other teams like Villa who are back now. So I think I'm hoping that by game week 22, the predictability of the games is higher, and then you can basically bench boost with a much more safer team. But to finally answer your question, I think I'm happy to bench Cancelo, Antonio, and Bowen, and bench boost with that, because those, each of them have good potential.
Yeah, I think just to kind of summarize your points, we did a chip strategy the previous week, and it just didn't work out because things are so different this season. So, the content and the material doesn't last that long. But what Pras is saying here is, if you still have both free hits, then a free hit in 22 is a great idea. If you can get to a bench boost with, let's say, 4 or 5 single game weekers, even 5, I think is okay as long as they are solid players. Go ahead and go use that bench boost and try to survive a couple more weeks without using the wild card, but wild card out of that bench boost if you can, whether that be 24, 26, who knows. And that is kind of the strategy that I'm going for, and I do believe that Pras is also looking for that as well. So that's kind of where the chip strategies are. But if you have one free hit left, Pras, you would definitely recommend to try to save it and try to field a starting 11 in 22 without with 1 or 2 hits max, right?
Yeah. Look, we'll spend a lot more time on this because we need to see who is doubling, right? If Liverpool is not doubling, then for me, free hit becomes much more appealing than a bench boost, because you get to take out your Liverpool, your City players, your West Ham players, maybe not all of them, but one of Antonio or Bowen, and get 11 doublers. Sure. But if Liverpool is doubling, then bench boosting with West Ham assets is fine as well. And Rubber Ducky makes the point, we will have a lot more doubles in the future. So this is not going to be the only big double. In fact, the biggest double that will come out is game week 34. Now, I wouldn't recommend waiting till then, because right now our benches are pretty stacked up. Because over COVID, all our Brownhills or Lucadias have been upgraded to a third or a fifth mid. So, and our second goalkeeper in many instances has been upgraded. So we do have a stacked bench. So I think if you're looking at a bench boost and you think even out of the 4 benches, 3 are good options, I would go for it.
Okay, let's do 3 more questions and end it at the 30-minute mark. Guys, no need to send super chats, please. So we'll do the super chat first. Nehal, thank you for your kind words. Great pod. FH1, free hit 1 in game week 27 with loaded on Arsenal and Liverpool. I think you're thinking way too far ahead. No need to think that far ahead, but anything to add here, Pras?
So game week 27, I'm just trying to think about why Nehal is looking at that. So game week 27 is the week that Liverpool and Arsenal blank. So what? Okay, now I understand the question. What he's saying is, we have 3 Liverpool, we have maybe 2 or 3 Arsenal. So suddenly free hit becomes appealing because you can take those guys out just for that 1 week. And let's see some of these fixtures in game week 27. So Spurs play Leeds, so good fixture. Man United play Watford at home, very good fixture. So yeah, I think it's potentially an option. I would just say, don't blow up all your free hits. You will need your free hit in either the blank game 30 or another time. And just to elaborate on this, when the FA Cup quarterfinals happen, there is no weekend specifically allocated to that. So what happens is, all the teams who are in the FA Cup quarterfinal, they all blank in game week 29. So what will happen is, you'll have a game week in 29 with a lot of bad teams. And I'm guessing bad because those are the teams that haven't made it into the quarterfinal of the FA Cup. So suddenly you have a week where a lot of the semi-decent teams or not so great teams are playing. And you're not going to take out your Salahs, your Cancelos, your Trents all in that 1 week and then get them back. So that's why 29 is usually a very good time to free hit. Now, there's an alternative way to get out of it, is basically you dead end your team. So that's the other strategy, is where you dead end your team for 29. You sell all these guys, and then in game week 30, you get them all back. We can spend an hour on chip strategy, but this is why I'm saying free hit is actually an important play. Yep. So either keep your second free hit or your wild card. Don't blow up your wild card and your second free hit before game week 29. You will be in a lot of trouble when the quarterfinal, FA Cup quarterfinal blanks come in.
FPL Bruce Wayne says, do West Ham have a chance for double game week in 22? No, apparently no chance. So keep that in mind. But West Ham have good fixtures afterwards. So I don't mind having Antonio and Bowen for that. Another question from Prakash, our graphics guy. Upgrade for Brownhill, Foden or Matty? Who would you pick?
Well, Madison will probably double in
Yeah.
22. So I would always pick the doubler
Doubler.
just for that
Yeah.
extra. And City, we haven't spent time on City because they're not part of the double gang. But I think City have very, very good fixtures after 2022. So, for example, the point Rubber Ducky made is free hit could be a good time is because if you're loaded up on City, you just take them all out for this game against Chelsea. And then you're actually in a very good position where you have the City assets for their games, which are, let me just see where they are.
While you're
they have
looking,
Southampton away, Brentford at home, Norwich away. So that's basically you want your triple up for those 3 games. And yeah, you'd be in a great position against others who probably sold all their City assets because they didn't want them because they play Chelsea in the double.
For people like me who have just Cancelo now, I sold Foden, I think this week. You're perfectly fine bench boosting in 22 with Cancelo. Just keep that in mind. Another question from Metallica01, who's been very kind to us today. Tonight's game prediction. I'm going to leave this to you, Pras, since you're the United fan.
Who won? Man United. And I'm a fan. We are the worst to do predictions because we have our fan lens. But I'm not that optimistic of our defense, and I think Wolves is decent, so they're not going to be pushovers. So 1-1 or 2-1, not very optimistic.
Okay, I'm gonna say this for the non-Ronaldo owners. Raise your hand, including myself. Let's go 0-0 and a De Gea clean sheet.
We're not keeping a clean sheet, so yeah, it's gonna. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, the good thing is it's at a decent time. I think it's 5:30 p.m. right? So a lot of people in Asia can watch the game without sacrificing their sleep.
Yeah. Okay, I think this was a very, very awesome session. Really enjoyed talking through a bunch of. It helps me a lot, Pras. You're a fountain of knowledge, and it's really, really nice to talk to you about FPL. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. It's been a pleasure. And we will be back next week before the deadline, so we'll have something more. We'll think of some topics for next week as well, and always hit that like button and support FF Scout and support Pras as well as myself if you can. And thank you again. Any final words, Pras?
No, just hold your transfers. Don't do anything. Relax. Watch the FA Cup. Watch the League Cup semifinals. Enjoy football. Don't worry about any transfers. And wait